Acquisition, mergers, and divestitures, how AI can minimize manual efforts and ensure a smooth transition. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent out after the event. All attendees are in mute mode and will remain muted for the duration of the webinar. If you have questions, use the Q&A button on your screen. We'll answer questions as appropriate the webinar and finish off with additional question and answer session at the end. If there are questions that we are not able to get to, we will answer those questions via email after the webinar. I would like to introduce our two presenters, Keith Parent, CEO and co-founder of Court Square Group, and Catherine Lunardi, CEO of GENAIZ. Keith, take it away.
Thank you, Roy. Hi, folks. My name is Keith Parent. I am the CEO and founder of Court Square Group. We are a managed service firm. We manage infrastructure for life science companies. We have what we call ARC. It's our Audit-Ready Compliant Cloud environment, as well as our document repository called RegDocs 365, which is the foundation for working with companies just like GENAIZ, who Catherine Lunardi, who will introduce herself in a second, is a partner of ours as we put together tools that I feel are very important in this industry. Our goal is, as we work in the life science industry, is to actually put together usable solutions. There's a lot of companies out there that have tools that are out there and they force you to use them. Our goal is to make them usable, particularly in the life science space, whether it's in clinical or regulatory. We do a lot of our work in the clinical and regulatory space. So part of what we wanted to do was look at a tool that we were asked by our customers, what do you have to solve this problem? I was at a economic development forum event in the Boston area, and I happened to be in the audience watching this great panel, and one of the people on the panel was Catherine Lunardi from GENAIZ, and I'll let her go into her background and how we started working together. Catherine?
Thank you, Keith. Thank you so much for the introduction. So my name is Catherine Lunardi. I'm the CEO founder of GENAIZ. At GENAIZ, we offer an AI platform, so an artificial intelligence platform. We're super specialized in the processing of unstructured data using natural language processing, open information extraction, as well as other technologies. Our model is simple, so we normalize, standardize the data in order to be able to exploit it using advanced analytics in the format of smart functions. So basically, we have extensive experience in life science industry. We offer a wide range of what we call smart function or artificial intelligence algorithm, ranging from clinical studies to manufacturing to distribution. So we're a one-stop shop to actually allow pharmaceutical companies to consume advanced analytics in the form of artificial intelligence in order to make their data talk quickly. So super happy to be here, Keith.
Fantastic, Catherine. Thank you very much for being here. And like I said, I met Catherine as part of a panel. We got to talking, and as I talked to her about some of the problems that my clients were having, we said, well, why don't we work on something together, and let's go into that solution as part of this process. First of all, let's talk about RegDocs 365. We have what's called a regulated content management repository. So we migrate lots of documents for different challenges for companies. And one challenge that one of our companies have is that we had to migrate a number of documents. We have a qualified and validated process for migrating documents, bringing documents over. One of the problems that these companies find after they're buying a compound, and usually it's called in-licensing. You're going to in-license a compound, bring that in. A lot of times there's a whole different series of projects where you're bringing in lots of documents. And our tool can actually work on any of those. But for now, we're talking about the M&A aspect of it. The concept was they migrated thousands of documents over on multiple months of time, bringing those documents in. One of the issues that you have when you're dealing with that volume of documents is that nobody can physically read them during that due diligence phase. So how do you deal with that? Because part of the process is maybe 3 months or 6 months down the road, you may be going through those documents and you find out that you don't have something that was there. How do we get away from that? It causes lots of delays. A lot of times if you have to go back to that company to find them, the data is not there, or they've re-archived it or whatever, and you try to get it back. So you're losing days or weeks or months accessing it. How do we do a better job at that? So with that, we started to look at solutions. The solution was using RegDocs and RefAI from GENAIZ, we can do the following. We wanted to first, number one, identify all of the existing documents purchased. So when you get these bullets of documents in, we already have routines that'll make sure that they're coming over correctly, but we want to make sure that we're categorizing them. We're going to use natural language processing, not only to identify those documents, but actually to read through those documents in real time as they're coming through. And then we use machine learning to identify all those references to both internal and external documents. Then we're going to do another pass over those documents and say, hey, of those documents that we got, we have references to these other documents, but those aren't in the documents that we have. So let's look at that and let's create a cross-reference against those documents. And once we do that, we can identify those things that aren't there during the due diligence phase rather than months or years later. We had one client that we were talking to that said, you know, we may have to go to the FDA to go back to get some of these documents because we purchased this compounds and we don't have some of these documents. We can also use this same tool to auto-classify other documents if possible. So right now, looking at RefAI, the streamlining the M&A deals, the challenge again was during the company acquisition, the pharma company has to go through thousands of documents. The solution was RefAI, which Catherine's team, which is a great team of AI engineers and data scientists, they validate the completeness of all the transfer documentation, ensuring that no documents go missing by processing more than 13,000 words per minute, pulling all those things in. We found out that RefAI, this tool that Catherine's team developed, was twice as accurate at missing files than human beings were when they were reading through the documents. You're going to save thousands of hours in staff time and reduce the risk of any kind of fines or things of missing data over the course of time. So our goal is to help you as an acquirer pull those things in. Catherine, other things you want to talk about from there with your team?
For sure, and you mentioned the different types of expertise that were required to make RefAI work. So we had linguists working on it, machine learning experts, we have ontologists working on it. So RefAI is composed of more than 10 different modules of natural language processing that combined through a unique workflow make this whole process happen. So it's fully productized. It could be applied on any data set, any set of documents within any types of company, providing and producing the same consistent results. It was a matter of figuring out how the brain or the human would actually process the information to come up with the result that led the team to actually identify the proper workflow and the proper modules of artificial intelligence that were required to make it work. And we're really happy. We have a patent that we filed on RefAI, and that proves that it's that for us it was something quite unique and quite innovative that the team composed of different experts was able to create.
I think that's a great point, Catherine, because one of the nice parts about what we did together was we already had expertise in an audit-ready compliant cloud for the life science world. So we already understood regulatory compliance aspects that were needed. And we had the document repository to actually house those documents. But what we didn't have was that AI expertise and the linguistics and all the things that Catherine's team of data scientists brought to the table. So working with GENAIZ, they came up with the RefAI tool that we were able to incorporate together into the RegDocs environment to provide a solution for our clients. And the result of that is you now can get a listing of all the documents that are missing. You can potentially auto-classify your documents based on file location or topic or content or metadata, however you want to look at those documents. We can reformat the output libraries within RegDocs 365 to match the target location at the company that's purchasing that asset. And then we can create PDF or Excel reports based on how you want to deal with that output. So our goal was to identify what is the real problem and how do we leverage that to kind of produce a solution that makes the most sense for our client base. And with that, let's talk a little bit about what it is that we're looking at. So when we're looking at the actual detail of the data and the problem itself, let's look at the M&A data set. You have lots of different aspects. You can either group them by quality or quality management, if you're looking at deviations, exceptions, different things like that. Or you may have all of your documents grouped by domain. They may have legal, regulatory, finance, intellectual property documents, and eLab notebooks, even email. When you think about the email stuff that gets out there, sometimes we're looking through PST files, and we have to actually break those apart to look at different things. All of you in this webinar may have ran into any or all of these different problems over time. Our goal is to figure out how can we take that and use that. Using both RegDocs and GENAIZ, we're able to pull those things together, and then using the groupings or the content, identify those documents. Let's dig in a little bit deeper. All documents typically will have a large number of references to other documents within them. Many of you think about that and you say, well, we have a reference section at the end, or we have an index. We can identify where those documents are from that. That's true. We probably do have an index that can identify some things, but then how many times within a document are we looking at documents that are actually talking about whether it's batch numbers or deviations or SOPs that may or may not be in there? And if you think about it, when I look at this example right now on the board, we're actually showing that the whole file name of that document, well, a lot of times the references within the document aren't that explicit. They may have the name of a report or things like that. Our goal is to actually look at them and figure out how do we put those things together. With that being said, let's move on to the next thought. Our goal in working with these kind of tools is to make it as easy as possible. So our goal is to say, how do we take it and just like drag and drop into something that will actually start the process going? That's where RefAI came in. We use our repository to grab those documents and use it, but we want to have something that's really easy for the user to actually be able to do something with it. We didn't want to have to force feed them to have to put things in the different place. So we actually created a way that you can just kind of drag and drop the exactly libraries that you're pulling in and hit a button where the reference checking algorithm kicks in and it generates those results. Catherine, your thoughts?
No, I think you've explained it very well, Keith. The whole goal behind RefAI was to actually make it very white box as possible, easy to use in terms of technology, so that the user would know exactly where the exceptions were and could locate them and act upon them. We have incorporated as well a possibility to actually disregard the exception that was identified, so that the user could actually interact with the platform and identify those exceptions that are not really exception, or that are acceptable. So again,
and we've got a couple of slides to show on that, so I'll get to those in a few seconds.
Perfect.
Let me pop on to a little bit further. So part of what Catherine's team also came up with was, as we're going through those libraries, we're also going to analyze all the documents. So we want to be able to look at the documents, identify how many documents, the type of documents, how many are in scope, how many are out of scope. And as Catherine was alluding to, there are ways that we can actually identify certain documents that we may want to look at or we may not want to look at. There might be some things there that just don't make sense for us to look at or aren't needed to be looked at. So of that, you can actually have all the statistics around that compound as part of that process. Actually, as an acquirer of a compound from somebody, you can use these analytics when you're going back with the company that you're buying these from, saying, hey, here's what I've got. You thought we thought we were going to get a lot more of this, or we thought there were more here in this regard. So you can actually use these as part of what is. And we're pretty open to adding whatever you need to from a reporting capability around those documents that we're going to be looking at. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper. Now let's look at, here's what I think is like the money shot. I think that when I like this is something that I think is really important for people to look at. When we pull in documents, most of us think of documents in the form of a hierarchy of, hey, we had these folders and these folders had these other documents and these other documents in it. So when we look at this particular screen, what we're looking at is a way to identify quickly for the user looking at the output, saying, where are my missing documents? So if we can identify which folders have some documents that are missing in them, and then you can drill down all the way to where the individual files are, you can see what is being referred to, and you can see what could potentially be missing. So going from left to right, you can look at the directory structure. You can actually identify how the directory is laid out, and then you can look at how in the documents themselves, you can see, well, here's where I had this one document that was referring to another document, but we don't have that document. What do we do about that? How do we solve that? Or is it something we can ignore? Or can we do something with that? So our goal here is to make it as easy as possible, again, to not only process the documents that are there, but then to look at the output and make it easy for you as an acquirer to see what it is that you're missing. We do this not only in the tree view, but we can also generate reports. We can do Excel output. We can do PDF output. We can do all sorts of different things depending on how you want to work or how you want to work with the team. So typically when you're working on an M&A team, you're going to have, the recipients of the documents. You're going to have the other team from the selling company that's actually telling you what they're giving you. And this is part of that process is to help to streamline that process here. What we talked about a little bit earlier, Catherine referred to it a while ago, is the ability for us to ignore or include files. So as we look through the files, we may find references to other documents that are in there that may or may not be pertinent to us. And if we don't think that they're pertinent and we want to ignore them, we can actually just check that off and say, listen, I don't care about this document. I don't really worry about the documents that are in here. They may be referring to things that we've archived or we're not using anymore, things like that. So you can actually bypass those and not have to worry about them. So the ability to do that as part of this function is important to be able to identify things that you need versus those that you don't need. So what is it doing behind the scenes and how does it make it work that way? Actually, Catherine, before I go on to that, is there anything that from your team's perspective that kind of got them into thinking about this, that they added this functionality? Because originally we hadn't really even thought about this.
Yes, exactly. And that's really what GENAIZ is all about. So all these, we're covering today RefAI. We wanted to take the approach with the platform to make the system as usable and as tailored as possible for a given piece of AI. So each and every smart function or AI functionality within the platform has its own UX, user experience. And we develop these interfaces to make it as easy as possible for the users to actually interact with the system and get the value they're looking for. In this case, we wanted to prevent the users from running RefAI again and again and always having the same exceptions that were shown that were already addressed. So we included that specific functionality in order to better support the users. And each and every smart function we built is really based on being easy to use, intuitive, and super tailored to the type of data we're processing, as well as the analytics that is actually procured by the user.
And I think that's to your credit, Catherine. I think that your team really took this project, in hand and looked at a lot of different things, not just the fact of what are we missing for files. They really looked at the concept of, well, if I'm on to have missing files, what are the things that are going to add into that, or how do I ignore things that I don't care about, things like that. So I was really happy with the way that the team put these things together. Let's talk about some of the specifics. As we get into some of the documents, we want to validate all the references within the documents. And what do we mean by that? We want to identify the files of a given repository. We want to look inside of them for those references, not just in the index, but also in the text of the document. We want to cross-reference those, and we want to return that list of the missing documents. How does it do that? Well, the different types of documents to be considered are things like the floating documents versus interrelated documents. If a document doesn't have any other references to other documents, then it becomes a floating document, and we have to still classify that because it's going to be a transfer document, but it's just not going to be one that we're worried about any other references to it. However, we then have the interrelated documentation where there could be references to something else or multiple references to different documents, which actually creates that tree structure that we talked about a little bit earlier. We want to make sure that we're looking at all those relationships within those documents. Two very distinct areas that you have to be careful about One is structured data versus non-structured data. The nice part is the GENAIZ tool can go through all the documents that are there. It'll actually look through the structured documents, which are typically, for most computer programs, structured documents are pretty easy. You can figure out where the data is in different cells of a spreadsheet or different columns of a Word document. Whereas when you look at non-structured data and it's in the form of text and it's all over the place, now how do you determine what's a reference to an external document? This is the great part about what Catherine's team was able to do, is that they were able to use the capabilities of looking at non-structured data and reading through that using natural language processing to identify those things that could be external references. We got a couple slides in a little bit to show on that. First of all, you start out with the reference section. So you want to look at the reference section of a document. This is easy, right? You look and say, okay, here's where we're identifying this and this other one and this other one. Well, the nice part is when you look at this, some of it may be like SOP Doc 041, GXP document management. The machine learning algorithm also has to recognize that that name has to be associated with a file. How does it do that? There's some machine learning that they put in place that would actually do that. It also has to look at things like the European directives on clinical trials and recognize those are external documents that may or may not be something that we have. So we want to ignore some of those, or we want to make sure that we identify those as external references to things that aren't in our control. Same thing with some of the guidance documents that may be referred to. Those are things that we want to be able to identify and make sure that we're looking at them, but not necessarily requiring them as part of what we're acquiring in the in-licensing aspect. Let's talk about those internal, and that's, again, what we just talked about with the internal and the external. In the reference section, you may have different areas where we're looking at analytical methods, or we're looking at process notebook pages, and we want to look at those. The machine learning algorithms have to know what they need to do when they're looking at those. And then they look at the external stuff, the UDRILUX Volume 2 current relevant document. Now that is something that could be an external reference. We want to know that. So we want to know that from a perspective of documents that we have included versus documents that are outside of that. How do we pull those things out and look at those separately? Well, let's look at the algorithm itself from a detailed perspective. So Catherine's team has come up with a number of ways to do this. So the first thing is identifying the files of a given repository. They want to only keep the ones that we're representing as an asset. So what we do is there's a first thing is a file name annotator. This thing is going to go through and actually look at all the file names and determine what file name is out there and make that list of the file names. From there, it's going to then go through and then look at IDs for the documents. How do we kind of look at the matching a file name with an actual reference to a document that may or may not use that file name? It may use something else within that document that we need to look at and identify. So in here, they've identified the concept of an ID annotator and a title annotator. So it can actually look for titles or IDs, and now we can refer to those as we're looking later on within the text. Catherine, anything more you want to add to that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, RefAI is a combination of multiple modules that aim at mimicking the way the brain works or the human works while checking for references. So it's all these steps together that produce the end result, and it's the combination of the expertise of many different expertise and types of knowledge that we put into it. So really happy and proud of the work that the team did on this.
Well, I think that's why when you think about linguistic engineers and you think about machine learning engineers and data scientists, they all have something to add to this.
Yes.
And it's all that combination of what they do that actually define what the output's going to be.
Yes, absolutely.
So once we do that, we then look inside the selected files for references representing that asset. So how do we find a reference to that asset? Well, just look at the text here and you're going to notice you've got transfer protocol, GN, blah, 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 whatever this number is. So they have an in-text annotator that's looking for those kind of references. Now we have to look at those references and cross those over what we have to find out, does that correlate to a file name that we can actually use and identify that? that's the best part about this, is that cross-reference. That's what we all talk about. How do we take these different pieces that are separate and identify them so that we can actually bring them all together? So step one is listing of the relevant documents inside the repository. And then step two is then using the different relative references to identify what we have and what we don't have. So those are the things that we want to be able to say, what is in this document that we're looking for, and how do we find that? And their algorithms are putting all of that information together, and we're using that as a process to drive the ultimate solution, which is identifying what we are missing. It's actually very gratifying to identify what you have and then do a cross-reference so people can see how different documents are tied together. And that may or may not be something you have out of the gate anyway, and may be in and of itself a valuable asset. But the reality is, when you can identify the ones you're missing, that's going to save the rework later on. That was the crux of what we started this project for, identifying those missing ones. In some respects, what we're doing right now, not only is it better than a human because it's faster and NLP is not going to miss anything, but it can find things what we don't even think about. And what we mean by that, well, if in fact you have something in a footnote, many people, when they're reading documents or going over things, you're not going to find some of these things. It just so happened that when we were doing the human part of this project, the researchers actually had a sample set of data they were putting together, doing things, and they were getting more references than they thought because they had done by hand, looking at everything. And all of a sudden you start to look at, well, why is it coming up with these extra things? You find out that it's finding things that we weren't looking at because the human brain naturally kind of overlooks some of those things. Well, if I need to look at this reference within a footnote that is necessary, then that is one of those references that could be required. So having that done is something we hadn't thought about again. But as part of doing this project, it became part of the ultimate solution. Catherine, I give you guys credit for doing that. More thoughts on that?
So that's the beauty of working with AIs. Sometimes you come up with unexpected results. So small story here. So of course we've generated new knowledge or generated exceptions with Ref AI that we were not expecting, but on a different perspective, we have other smart functions at GENAIZ. Especially around research and development, for instance, biomarker signature, where we have developed an algorithm that based on genetics and vector machines. And in this specific case, we were able to actually, again, come up with results that were unforeseen, where we identify a new biomarker that was especially useful for science. So that's the beauty of, when my point here, Keith, is that's the beauty of working with AI. You build a tool, the tool becomes more and more competent. And at the end of the day, sometimes you're very surprised with the results because they go over and beyond what you've expected and what you were able to do yourself as a team, as a scientific team, as a team of experts, quality experts going through documents. So that's the very rewarding part of working with AI and building something that can actually learn and come up with unexpected and better results than what we could do ourselves.
Well, I think that's a really valid point, Catherine, because one thing people don't realize, that the whole concept of machine learning is that it's going to get, the more you process documents, the more you go through these, it's going to get better at identifying what those external references are, and you're going to miss less and less over time. So that's the big part of this, is what we have here. And it's going to flag areas that you may or may not have thought about before. So, and particularly when you start getting much larger volumes of documents coming in, it's very difficult for anybody to do that. I know that I sit on some industry groups, and we're working for a number of large pharma companies. And I was relating a story about doing this, and one of the engineers from one of the companies said, we had a project where we in-licensed a compound from somebody. We sent it over to India we had a team of about 30 people working on this for about 3 months. They said, and when it all came back to us, we were doing the exact same thing that your tool is doing but by hand with people. And quite honestly, they only got about a 30% hit rate on finding all the references. So, the concept here is that the machine doesn't care how long the document is. It doesn't care how many documents you have. It's just going to run through them and run through them and run through them until you're done looking at all the documents. The nice part about this is once you've identified missing documents, you can go back during the due diligence phase, get more documents, and we feed them back in. We drag and drop them back into the library. And what happens is the algorithms will go over them again. It's not going to reprocess the ones it's already seen because it's already seen those. It's actually going to use those now to look at the new ones that are coming in. And does it fill in the gaps? Does it fill in the holes for those that you missed first time? So if you iteratively do this during the due diligence phase, you actually will get the majority of all the documents that you would expect to have. If you think about any in-licensing activity and you think about how many times your teams had to go back to that company to find those documents, in some regards, it can save you weeks or months. I just talked with somebody a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and they were talking about a situation where they bought a compound, and after they bought the compound and they had it for a few months, the company actually went out of business. So now they were no longer around, so they couldn't go back to them to find more documents or do anything. Who knows what happened to all of the assets within that document that were left that could be there. So, even as a protection or a risk mitigation factor for yourselves, this can actually help you in the long run mitigate that risk of missing anything that might be there as well. Let's continue. So when we talk about the landing zone, RegDocs 365, we have a validated process for transferring those documents from the selling company. RegDocs 365, we can set up working libraries, transfer libraries, whatever kind of libraries we want to work on, and we can use RefAI then to identify those missing documents. So we put those documents somewhere, we then drag and drop, click the buttons, RefAI goes to work, and when it's done, it gives us all those documents. We iterate through any new documents that are requested, and then we can actually use additional functionality or content within the documents themselves to actually auto-classify those documents. Where do they go? How do we put them? At the same time, within RegDocs, we can actually create a transfer site that can mimic an existing legacy system or identify how to put them into existing systems. So if you do this more than a couple times and you have a setup that you want to transfer multiple different compounds into or in-license assets, and you want to go into legacy systems, the first time you set it up, we can actually use that over and over and over again every time you pull it in. So if it's going into a Documentum system or a Viva system or whatever system you have, we can actually feed that into that in the way you want it and make sure the metadata gets tagged correctly in our system prior to it going into those. So that's another part of a way of saving those documents. With that being said, one of the things Catherine and I have been talking to is a number of companies have said, well, if it's used for M&A type activities, are there other things that we can use it for? What do you mean by that? Well, what we mean by that is, can it be used for doing submission documents? We're a large CRO and we get lots of documents in, and we're going to be doing a submission processing of a drug product going to the FDA. A lot of times we're going to pull in a lot of documents, but we're missing documents. We have to keep going back to the sponsor to get those documents. Can we do the same thing here? Absolutely. There's no reason that RefAI can't do the exact same thing with these documents coming in, identifying what you have and what you don't have. And again, you can identify things you don't care about that aren't going to get submitted, but then you use that. What if I'm going to do a marketing authorization with another country? Or if I just have any large volume of documents to deal with? Well, that submission cross-reference, you're going to get in thousands of documents. We're going to put them into specific modules that are going to be used. We can go through that and we can use the same concept that we would have used during the M&A tool to actually do the same thing with this. So again, if you think about the larger you are and the more documents you have, the more you may have an identified need for dealing with large bolus of documents. In this case, we're talking about submission documents going in to somebody. How do we deal with those? We can use RefAI to identify the missing documents so that you can go back and get those before you do the submission. Or you turn it over to your regulatory team that's actually going to do all that work. Same thing with a marketing authorization application. You may have a marketing product, a marketed product in the US that you want to now market in Europe or some other geography around the world. Well, in order to do that, you're going to have to do a marketing authorization application. And there's lots of documents and checklists and things that are tied together to all of those pieces. How do we put those together? Well, let's have all those documents put together. We can then cross-reference them, make sure we're minimizing the risk of missing any of those documents during that application process. Again, anytime you have a large volume of documents, we have the ability to use Ref AI to look through those, cross-reference, identify missing documents, and be able to use that for that process. With that being said, we talked earlier on with Catherine about the fact that GENAIZ has a marketplace with multiple products. Ref AI is actually one product that we've worked on with GENAIZ. When I first met Catherine, they had a number of products that she spoke about, and that's what really kind of got me interested in working with GENAIZ. Catherine, how about going through a little bit about your marketplace?
Sure, thank you, Keith. So the marketplace model is the following. So any company can become a user of the marketplace. We currently have a catalog of what we call smart functions. So smart functions are a combination of AI modules that are grouped together through an automated workflow. Ref AI is a smart function. We have biomarker signature as a smart function, patient clustering. We have also a product called the quality review, where we detect exception and anomalies pertaining to clinical study related data, batch records. We do batch records reconciliation, for instance. So everything that's pertaining to actual quality review. So the user could have access to the GENAIZ platform, connect with a platform system like RegDocs, so that GENAIZ could actually ingest the data. Everything is secure. We only keep the data that is compliant from a GDPR perspective. We train the models, and once GENAIZ becomes aware of the data that was ingested, then we could the user could actually select from a range of smart function that may be relevant for the data that was ingested. So for instance, in this case, what we've been demonstrating today is mergers and acquisition. So the user would have ingested the documents and then would apply the Ref AI algorithm. And for a specific clinical study, we've had customers use our biomarker signature, a smart function where the end result will not be a series of anomalies or exception, but rather any biomarker signature that may be relevant for the specific clinical study. Same thing for quality management, quality review. So the user can adjust protocols, can ingest any logs so that they could compare both to check if the values that were entered manually by the user or that were produced by the equipment, for instance, are within the ranges that are specified in the protocol or the SOP, for instance. So our goal with the marketplace is really to offer a simple way to consume AI within an organization. So we rely on our internal expertise to build a smart function, but the external expertise of our partners as well. So once we identify a need for a customer, we proceed with either providing the existing smart function, or we could create the smart function alone or with a partner. So picture kind of an app store where you would have available a catalog of smart function that you can consume on a pay-per-use basis. So you don't need it, you don't pay for it, you need it, you have a big mergers and acquisition coming in, then you can consume the Ref AI based on the number of pages that you need to process, and that's it. It's available whenever you need it, and at a price that is consistent with the value that's created.
Well, and I think what's important for people to realize is that there's lots of AI companies out there coming out with all these different things that AI can do, and they're all great. Don't get me wrong. The issue really is if we can put together things that are tailored toward the life science world, yes, and tailored toward quality management, or tailored toward clinical trials, or tailored toward the M&A aspect of bringing in a drug compound, we're going to continue to have that functionality over and over and over again. And the machine learning algorithms are just going to get that much better with the more data that we pass through these things. So our goal here is to work with you as clients to put together offerings specifically for the life science world that we can work on. And then AI becomes a valuable tool for you as opposed to this esoteric concept that's out there where people are using ChatGPT to create things. We're using AI to actually identify solutions to be used across the board for our client base. With that being said, we're going to come up on where we've got some time left for questions. I want to make sure we bring up any questions that may be in there right now that people may be asking. At this point, Catherine, thank you very much for all your time for this webinar, and I enjoyed doing there. Roy, did we have any questions that came through?
So we have a few quick questions. First, what file types can this work with?
So our algorithm can work with all the different file types. It will actually take them all in and read through them. We'll PDF them, and we can actually put them through as any file type can be read through the system.
Yes.
Second question is, can you handle multiple languages?
Yes, I'll take that one, if that's okay,
Sure,
Keith.
go for it.
So being based in Montreal, we had to build a platform so that it could be able to at least handle French and English. So resulting is our ability to actually process any languages for sure. With some customers, for instance, the Welsh, there's some languages where we don't have that much data to train the model with. So that could be a little more challenging. But for all these languages where we have enough corpus to train the model, this is absolutely not an issue.
And we have, as Court Square, we actually are working with other partners that have other tools that do language processing. So we can actually set up a way that we can work with different documents, particularly with other languages, and feed those into RefAI if need be. So if you have a need, please let's talk about that and see how that might fit.
Two questions that are related. The first one is, can you tell us about processing time?
Catherine, you want to deal with that? I know you guys have been working on that
Yes.
quite a bit.
Yes, absolutely. So being cloud-based, we offer a cloud-based solution. Just a quick words about that. The platform is cloud provider agnostic, so we could put the platform on any type of cloud environment. That being said, we could easily do some parallel processing. Generally, what we do is with the customer, we establish the criteria of success, and we could pretty much increase the speed, the processing speed at any level, provided that we know what to expect in terms of the quantity of the documents and what is expected by the customer. So parallel processing, as well as being based on pure cloud environment, makes the solution extremely scalable.
Yeah, we have ways many times of orchestrating large-scale computing environments within the cloud offerings that we have. So that shouldn't be an issue with building up large volumes. Right now, I know when Catherine, I think one of our earlier slides, we talked about dealing with 13,000 words a minute. That was early on when we were first starting it, and they've really enhanced that today to where they can do far more than that, particularly if we're going to be dealing with parallel processing and lots of engines going on at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
This last question is as related. How long does the initial repository crawl take? And I assume that has to do with the size of the repository, but.
Yes, that would have to do with the size of the repository. Again, it could be a matter of minutes, hours, depending on the number of documents and the model that we need to train. We work closely with every customer to make sure that the expectations are met, so we could increase processing time so that we have a response time that is adequate based on the different requirements and the urgency of processing the data.
Well, I think as we go through this, working with Catherine's team, one of the things that we're working on a regular basis is looking at the capacity management around dealing with those different volumes. Part of it's going to be based on the number of documents, the size of the documents, how many references within the document. So if you start to think about all the different factors that go into that, we're going to come up with better and better algorithms for figuring out ultimate timings and how to orchestrate the appropriate computing environment for the cost. Because we can make the computing environment as big as you want it, but there's a cost associated with that. So we have to make sure that we're looking at all those factors going into it. But that's part of the upfront configuration workshop when we work with our clients.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that's all we have for now. So I want to thank Catherine and Keith for a very valuable, interesting, and informative session. I appreciate your time. Oh, hold on. We had one more question. Nope. So thank you very much, and have a great afternoon. And we'll be sending this out after the webinar. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all for your time today.